Good evening, everybody. I'd like to call this meeting to order. It's June 14th, 2023. It's a little after 5 o'clock. This is the Finance Committee. And I'm looking at the agenda and I'd like to make a few comments before we go into item number 2. First, I want to welcome Mira. She is new to our assistance here, helping us with our minutes and our agendas, and I'm really looking forward to having you here. So thank you very much for what you've done so far, and welcome to the Finance Committee.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
The second item that I'd like to talk about is, first, I want to apologize. This committee and the 9 of us, eight are here today, are all volunteers. We spend an awful lot of time working on the various financial things that we need to work with during the year, especially during November through March. We meet at least once a week and sometimes twice. And so I want to apologize first when the letter that Paul worked with Rich for the warrant article. The names at the end of the article were not the ones that were on the letter that we sent to be put into the warrant. So one name was missing and one name was not correctly in there. So first I want to apologize for that. And I'm sorry that the names did not show up correctly as the letter that was done. Second, I want to apologize for the town meeting. When we were introduced at the town meeting by Scott Carey, our moderator, he used the names that were attached to the letter in the warrant. And unfortunately, they were incorrect, and one was missing and one was incorrect. And I just want to say that he apologized to me after the fact, when he realized that when he had sent the names to everybody at the meeting, the town meeting, that some of them were incorrect. So again, as I say, we all work many hours on this, and we're all volunteers, and I think that we need to make sure that everybody is aware of the work that we do. I'm going to go on to item number 2 of the agenda, and it is the minutes. Originally, I had 2/8/23 as missing, and Rich told me that that was approved on 2/15, and it just hadn't been sent in. And it has been sent in now. It's on the town website. So I'm going to start now with the minutes of 2/15, and I want to thank Rich for all of these again, because as you can see, there are 6 of them on here. So I'd like to start with the minutes of 2/15. And does anybody have a motion to approve the minutes of 2/15?
I'll make that motion.
That is Roy,
I'll second.
Joanna. Is there any discussion?
They look great.
I have something in item number 2 at the beginning of number 2, where it says review and vote on minutes. And then it says item taken out of order, and there's a word there that I don't know what it is.
Should be revisited.
Revisited,
Requested.
revisited, Rich? Okay, so that needs to be fixed. And is there any other discussion on minutes of 2/15? And under the rules, Tom is our clerk, should be signing off on these when they go to the town clerk. Do I have a motion to approve?
I'm sorry, Mary. So I'll work with Mira on that.
Yeah,
Should we?
When you say sign off, do you
sign
mean,
off.
would you like me to put his name at the bottom?
Yeah.
I'll do that for all of these.
I'm sorry?
I'll do it for all of these then.
Oh.
USB's busted.
Okay, so do I have a motion to approve the minutes of 2/15 as amended?
So
I'll
moved.
get there.
Roy and,
Paul.
I'm sorry,
I'll second it, Mary.
that's Roy and Paul?
Mhm.
Yes.
Okay, all in favor of approving the minutes, and since we have somebody on Zoom, I have to do roll call.
I'll just raise my hand if it's easier.
Roy,
Yes.
Tom, Paul,
Yes,
Russ,
Yes.
Yeah.
Joanna, me,
Yes.
Peter, that's 8-0. As amended. The next one is 2/22. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes of 2/22?
I'd like motion to approve the minutes,
That's Tom.
2/22.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Russ, okay. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 1, 2, 3, 4, Paul, Russ, 5, 6, 8-0. So that's the 2/22. We're now down to 3/8. What did I do? 3/8. Oh, there it is.
You said those were already approved.
Those are the.
No,
When you started, I thought you said
February.
3/8 was
That's
already.
February.
no, that was 2/8.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. 2/8. We're looking at the minutes for March 8th. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of March 8th,
I'll make that motion.
Roy? Is there a second?
Second.
Joanna, is there any discussion? I have a question on that, and it's under item 7, where under adjourn, where you've got, and I didn't quite understand, where you've got Paul B. Brown noted not voting.
Because he
I
didn't
think-
want the meeting to end.
right. Mary, that was the deal that I was appointed but had not been sworn in,
Oh, okay,
right?
So
So.
it wasn't like you were sitting here and refused to raise your hand.
No, I would have raised my hand, but it was illegal to do so.
Okay.
Okay, so should, we should put something there, not voting due to, I don't know what the proper
Official
verb,
appointment.
due to lack of appointment.
If he's not official, then I guess I should just be 7-0, right?
Yeah, why don't we do just 7-0? Do you mind not having your name down there?
I've been disappeared. It's
Yeah,
fine.
right. We're removing Paul B. Brown not voting,
Fine.
leaving it 7-0 as noted. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes as amended?
Motion approved.
Tom,
Second. 8.
and second?
Yeah.
Russ? All in favor? Aye, 8-0.
7-0.
No,
Yeah, no, I'm legitimate now. I can vote now. I couldn't vote then, but I can vote now.
Technically, he wasn't at the meeting.
you look real to me, but that's,
Yeah,
never know
Thank
that-
thank you, Mary.
We go 7:01 because I missed the meeting, so I abstained.
oh, yes, that's right.
March 8th, right? Yeah.
7, so it should be 7:01.
Yeah.
7:01, and that should note that you were absent
It is noted
Wow.
at the top.
at the top,
Yeah.
yes, yeah. That's
Yeah.
Peter. So we're changing the vote to 7:01, noting that the 1 is Peter Wade, and we're removing the Paul B. Brown not voting verbiage. So do I have to go?
No,
No, I'm gonna say that Tom McNamara approved it, Russ seconded it, and it's 8-0. Does anybody have a problem with that?
No, 7-0-1.
I'm sorry?
7-0-1.
Oh, I'm sorry. This happens, yeah, you're right. 7-0-1. I think I'm going ballistic here. 7-0-1, you're correct. Okay. Let me see, that's March 8th. March 22nd. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes of March 22nd?
I make a motion that the minutes of March 22nd be approved.
That's Roy. Is there a second for the minutes of March 22nd?
I'll say.
Tom G. Is there any discussion? I have under almost the third from the bottom. Motion by Rick Knight to recommend to town meeting Article 5B. I had that was approved and seconded by Paul instead of Joanna in my notes.
Believe it or not, I couldn't remember all these.
You're
Votes.
kidding, you're kidding.
So on this one, I actually went to the video and rewatched the
Oh,
video.
Oh, yeah,
And I think on my watching the video in my notes, I think I had Joanna.
oh.
So you still could be right.
Mhm.
So how about I reconfirm
Okay.
This
okay.
per the video?
Because these are just from my notes, yeah.
And if I'm wrong, I will take your
Okay.
amendment. And if I'm not, we'll stick with it.
Okay.
And just one minor up under 3. Vote at the top of the draft, Joanne.
Yes, I have that
Was it-
spelling,
Yeah,
Joanna.
just as Joanna. Everywhere else is
Yeah, yeah,
Joanna.
Yeah,
so
With
that
an
needs to
A.
just be changed.
I'm
back
sorry,
to
where is this?
Joanna,
Joanna?
yeah. It's the end of the second sentence under item number 3.
right?
Oh, yeah.
And I have another question, because when we voted on the last item of, you have Article 6, but when we voted on it, it was Article 6A, because there were 6B and 6C that were possible articles, but then at the end, they weren't articles at the, not the end of our discussion, but at the end of the putting a warrant together. So should that remain, should that show 6A? Or should it leave as 6?
I would say 6, because 6 is with the final, right? If
Right,
there's no
the 6
6,
is the
the
final.
drafts don't exist.
Okay, I just
Right.
didn't know. I just wanted, because as I said, when we voted on it, it was 6A.
Yeah.
But at the end, it was just 6, because there was no 6B and 6C.
Right.
Yeah, okay, so we'll leave it at 6. Okay. Okay, so that, so do I have a motion to approve the minutes of March 22nd as amended?
So move.
That's Roy, was that Roy?
Yes.
Okay, and second, Joanna? All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8-0. We're now down to March 29th. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes of March 29th?
Make
I'll-
motion.
Russ? Do I have a second?
I'll second Mary. Paul,
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor of the minutes of March 29th? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 0. And the last one is our last meeting before the town meeting. And that's dated April 4th. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of April 4th?
I'll make a motion. to
Tom,
approve the minutes of
Tom,
April 4th.
M,
I'll second.
Russ, second. Any discussion? All in favor? April 4th, that's 8-0. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, Rich. Thank you, Mira, for doing what needs to be done, and we put Tom McNamara's name on the bottom as the clerk for these minutes. And I just want to note that there were 2 other meetings that we had. One was March 15th and one was March 20th. But they were joint meetings with the select board, so we will not be doing those minutes. That's done by the select board since it was a joint meeting. Okay, so going forward, I'm really hoping with Mira on board here that we will be able to have the minutes from this meeting at the next meeting and so forth and so on, so that we're not stuck doing this at the last minute. Okay, on to item number 3 of the agenda, nominations and possible votes on committee officers and reorganization for upcoming fiscal year 2024. And first, I just want to say that I want to thank Tom Gardner for all his many, many years that he's been on the committee. His term is up this year, 6/30/23, and he has decided to not continue. And so we're sorry about that, but I just want to thank you for all your years. You were on the board long before I was, so.
It's 2-3 years. Sure.
2-3 years, yeah.
Yep.
So,
Thank you. I appreciate
Thank
that.
you.
You know, you all well. I'm
Mhm.
focused on a few other things that I kind of need to focus on.
mhm,
The Florida situation.
yeah.
and
mhm.
California, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm going to be doing a lot of travel. It's time for me to take a break
Mhm.
and we'll see what the future holds.
Yeah, yeah,
But
good.
thank you and I wish you all well.
Same to you, Tom.
Yeah,
Thank
same to you. Yeah. And I think you're responsible for letters, right? From the select board? Yeah, you can do one for Tom.
I don't need a lot of. Thanks, Art.
I'm sorry?
Handshake.
How about a school of notice? It should come up on the agenda, I think, right, Rich, for approving the resignation, yeah, and then they
Yeah.
automatically do it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well, it's not a resignation.
Yeah, I just asked to not be
Not
appointed.
to be reappointed, yeah.
Yeah, but anything, anytime,
Any of that.
anytime
anything.
people come off,
Yeah,
But yeah.
then I do the letter.
yeah, yeah.
I don't know, I don't think I can say anything good about them, though.
That's why I'm leaving.
Could go to the Rock Harbor. Nah, we don't have that.
Okay.
Okay, so as I mentioned, there are 2 other folks whose terms were up. One was me. My term was up on 6/30, will be up on 6/30/23. And I have been reappointed by the by the moderator, Scott Carey. So I'm been reappointed for another 3 years for 6/30/26, 26. And the other person whose term was up this year was Tom's, because you replaced somebody else originally whose term was up now. Tom is a person that was appointed by the Finance Committee itself. And so I think that we need to, are you interested in continuing?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Leave the room for the vote.
Just have to make sure.
Yes.
So I think the Finance Committee has to approve the reappointment of Tom would be for another 3 years, since what you've been doing was part of somebody else's term. Do I have a motion?
Yeah, I move that we recommend Tom
Mhm.
to be reappointed for another 3-year term.
Okay,
Right.
okay, so that's Peter. I'm sorry, Peter and Russ?
We tied for a second.
Should you put
No tie.
Russ, Joanna?
Yeah, Russ around.
No. Who wants to be the one?
Russ is fine.
Us, okay. So, do I, can I, I can't even talk anymore. Okay, so we need to vote on approving, Tom being on the board for another 3 years, not another 3 years, but the next 3 years. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Okay, you're not going to vote for yourself?
I can, I didn't know I could.
Sure. Yeah, you can vote for yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. All righty, so that's 8-0. That's with Peter and with Russ. Now we're down to the decision of determining who the next officers will be. We must decide on a chair for fiscal year 24, a vice chair and a clerk. So do I have any, not any, but do I have a motion to appoint somebody to be chair for the next fiscal year?
Make the motion to,
I'm sorry?
I'll make the motion that Mary be nominated for the next term.
And I will second it.
Are you
Um,
interested in that?
If you're not interested.
Yeah,
let's-
yeah, yeah. I just want everybody to be aware, in case they're not, that I am currently on 2 other committees in town. I was just re-elected for the Board of Trustees for the library. This will be my 5th term with them. I'm on the Community Preservation Committee. I have 2 more years at the moment on that, and I was just re-elected to be chair. I was chair of that last year, and I've been re-elected to be chair of that next year. And I found that, of course, this was my first year as chair this past year. It was a lot of work. I'll be honest with you. It was a lot of work, given everything else that I'm involved with. So I don't know whether there's can you have co-chairs or?
Got vice chair, the vice chair can chair a meeting.
Yeah.
You could inquire if anyone else would be interested in a nomination.
Ask
It-
if anyone else would like.
Is anybody else interested in being chair?
Not I.
No,
I
nobody.
was actually gonna get a little off the motion, but to ask if, because I found on a lot of these committees, if you become vice chair, then you become chair.
Yeah, well, that's how we
And
do
I'm
it.
not, I'm not really interested in being chair. So if somebody who might be interested in being chair sometime wanted to be vice chair or co-chair, it
Mhm,
might be a better appointment for the future, for succession planning,
mhm.
and maybe I'll throw that out there.
See, we do that at the library where we have a chair for 2 years and the vice chair becomes the chair after the 2 years.
Yeah. That's what I'm afraid of.
He's trying to get out there.
We can't have 8 people that are afraid.
I mean, I think Tom make a great chair at some point, but I don't know if he is interested with all the travel and everything.
I am interested in the long term. I'm just not sure next year's the right time. I'd like to,
Which
you know,
could be vice.
one more year.
Sure,
I'd be interested in vice if, you know, and pay attention to somebody for the next year, maybe one more year, and then I'd be interested in maybe. You think it's approved?
So
Or co-chairing, if, you know,
I-
certainly, you ought to lean on your co-chair, I mean, your vice chair. whatever you
sorry?
call it, Co-chair or vice chair, I think that, you know, lean on the vice chair.
Yeah, well,
offload some of
Peter
it.
and I have been doing that this past year. I
Okay.
mean,
Okay,
So-
we've worked together.
just a thought on easing, and I'm not interested in being chair, but in easing your burden for the work for this upcoming year, and Peter, who's very versed in this but doesn't want to become chair, that there's co-chairs and a 3rd vice chair. And that way you would actually make Peter, or however you do it, you know, alternate.
I like
Pairing.
that Peter doesn't get off the hook then.
They don't get off
Right.
the hook. But you're half on the hook.
Sure. That'll be my job.
So there's co-chairs and a vice chair,
What are people's thoughts on that?
just a.
I don't know. I'm open to suggestions, comments, thoughts.
I definitely enjoyed working with you this year and going
Mhm.
to have pre-meetings with Rich and all, and
Mhm.
happy to do that again. As long as I don't end up chair.
Now, why don't you want to be chair?
It's a long list. I don't think I'd be particularly good at it. I've been chair of other committees.
I mean, I know you
I
have.
know my limitations.
Yeah.
So, and I think we maybe have some better candidates on the committee.
Well, I appreciate everybody's thoughts and the vote. If we did continue the way we've been doing it, is that what you're proposing? I mean, I want to, I'm not sure.
Anna suggested,
I
just
mean, co-chairs and a
Yeah.
vice chair, is that
So we-
how would that, well, I.
So
asked
if you had a
Rick-
co-chair or a vice chair, or however you want to run it, whether it's 2 of you or 3 of you that are trying to share the load a little bit more equitably.
Mhm.
You know, not all 3 need to come in to see me when we do meet, but I can keep you Three is not a quorum, so I can keep
Right,
you all in the loop at the same level on email, send you things in advance. You know, if I can't meet with all three of you and say two of you are only available, I can follow up with the third. That's fine with me.
don't
I
wanna
think
make
it'll
extra
work. I
for
think,
you.
Mary, you, as a co-chair, I think what you need to learn, not to learn, I don't mean it that way. What you need to do though is make sure that you, it's giving up of the control, right? So if you're co-chairing something, that to me is the challenge.
Mhm.
I just need a little bit of, I'll work with all of you. It doesn't matter. I got to work with all of you anyway, but if I'm keeping in touch with 2 or 3 people as co-chairs, I just don't want to be.
Pulled 3 ways.
You got to understand,
Yeah,
they're co-chairs, right? So as a measure of control that will have to be let up, but end of the day, all 9 of you are going to be kept in loop. So I don't see it as a problem, just is what it is. But I think that's a good solution because we had talked and,
Yeah,
you know,
talked.
it's a lot of work,
Pretty much,
a lot of information.
you probably have about the same load as you did this year.
Well, if you take on more and you take on some, then that would help.
Yeah.
So should the nomination be changed to, for Mary to co-chair at this point in time?
That's what it sounds like right now.
Russ, you're always good at making motions.
I'll make that motion to, appoint Mary as co-chair. I don't know if we do that in one thing.
Just everybody.
Yeah, do the whole slate.
Yeah, do the whole slate. Yeah, let's do the whole slate.
Now we need a clerk too.
And then we need a clerk. Yeah.
We have to nominate Peter for co-chair.
Right.
Right,
So I'll make a motion to nominate Peter as co-chair of the
Okay.
finance committee.
second.
Want to put it all in one motion?
Yeah, I think it's all one
If we
motion.
could,
The whole slate should
we
be,
need a volunteer for clerk now.
right. Is who would like to be, would you like to be clerk? Joanna?
Willing to be clerk unless Roy or
You'll love.
Paul.
Yeah, Paul.
I'm, your call. I'm happy to do it. I'm happy not to do it.
Paul's happy to do it.
Yeah, okay. So we'll moved it.
Okay.
So so let me just go over what we're talking
Okay.
about here. We're talking about having co-chairs, which would be myself and
Peter.
Peter. And we're having a vice chair with Tom. And we're having Tom McNamara, and we're having a clerk with Paul B. Brown.
Right.
Paul B. Brown. Tom McNamara.
Say,
Russ,
that's
was that,
the motion.
did I hear you say that, Russ?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I'm happy with that motion.
Happy with that motion? Okay, so should I repeat it, or does everybody okay with it?
Need a second.
Okay,
Second.
shall do we need to have, so Russ has made the motion, I need a second.
Second.
Tom G.
Could be here,
Peter.
but second, I think that's a great lineup.
Great lineup. Sounds like we're on the football field.
It's like,
Okay, so we have Russ and making the motion, Tom Gardner, seconding it, all in favor. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 0. Okay, folks, here we go. So just, we have an individual that's interested in replacing Tom. And a meeting had been set up with the search committee for the 26th at 4:30, but I cannot make it.
Maybe.
And we were waiting to see who was going to be chair, so maybe Peter could go
26th, what day of the week?
26, it's a Monday.
on Monday at
I
4:30.
think I can. Steve's my neighbor. and
Oh,
I
yeah,
know him,
that's
so
not a good
I
idea.
don't know if I should.
I don't think that's a
mean, I'd
good
be happy
idea.
to do it.
He's the one that he
I'm
spoke
one
to.
that,
Yeah.
Found him.
Yeah, I'm not
I
sure.
know, but
I'm not sure that's a good
I'm happy to
idea.
Do it. Unless-
I don't think it's a problem. I mean,
Okay,
because
It's a select
it's
board.
gonna be a
it's a
select,
select appointment.
it's a select board appointment.
Right.
So, I mean, I just want to, make sure the finance committee doesn't say, no, we don't like
Yeah,
this
yeah,
guy.
right.
So anyway, no, I think it's fine if Peter does it.
Okay. So you check it's
26th.
the June 26th, it's a Monday at 4:30.
I just would rather not put it off.
Oh, I agree, because we had a hard time getting a date to begin with.
So, okay.
Yeah, okay. Okay, I think we're finished with item number 3 of the agenda. And we're on to item number 4, update on fiscal year 2023 year-to-date financial results.
I'm gonna talk about finance.
Yeah, good stuff.
Don't need this.
Like to come up with a better way to do these for you. And one of the things I'm thinking, and there's a lot we could talk about, is when you ask me to update you about something, so like on what, there's, it's a couple dozen things we could probably talk about. But I have a few things for tonight, but I did want you to know that I would like to do it a little bit differently. So I've actually been talking to each of the division heads, accounting, treasurer's office and the assessing office. And I think what we'll do, and I can work with the new committee in the upcoming year to kind of formalize it and improve it over time. But I'd like each of them to come in from time to time and get to know you and focus on the areas of their expertise and knowledge. So you have a little bit more in depth. And so we have some good stuff to go over. On the treasurer's office, we could talk about, investing of excess cash. We've got, tax collection rates, how many real estate property tax accounts have gone into collection, which is very low. So that's all good news to report, and I want them to get credit for it. And I want them to get some face time with folks too. So I think we'll start to do that as part of our updates. And then what I want to try to do is work with our accounting office and kind of standardize some of the reports we're going to go over tonight, that just an easy distribution with maybe some commentary on them at a follow-up meeting, but we don't have to spend a lot of time on them. But I'd rather have you spending the time with the individuals working in each of the offices. And then, of course, if I have anything, I would tell you too. But I think that would be useful information to give you some more in-depth insight from the people that are actually doing that work. So, but for tonight, what I thought we'd hit up, as you might recall, every year we're getting ready to hit our year end on June 30th. After year end closes, I usually do in, I think, September, a year end review. And that year end review a lot of times focuses on budgetary performance, and in particular, our generation of free cash, right? And so what I thought we'd go over tonight as far as a FY23 update is, how is that looking as far as generation of free cash for FY23? And there's several components, but the two biggest ones are our local estimated receipts and our status of our budgeted appropriations. And if you recall from our prior year-end reviews, I do slides summarizing that information. And so we'll feed into when you get this update in the next couple months. So I sent to you 2 sheets. And unfortunately, the top one says FY22, but the one that doesn't have May and June in it is the FY23. So this is our local receipts through April.
Mhm.
And then for comparison, the one with all the months was last year, FY22.
Yeah.
And so I like to look at the bottom line. I know we have individual line items and there might be discussion on individual line items. All the way to the right on the total on the current year on the FY23 through April. You'll see that the total says 6,213,239.
Yep.
Art, do you have a copy? Do you want a copy? And the budget for this year was is all the way over on the left, is 4,164,000. And the variance of 1,455,000 means that we have collected more than what we have budgeted. So that's great.
We'll give it back, right? I'm just kidding.
The worst, what we don't want to be is not above budget, because that means we've got a
Right.
deficit and a shortfall that has to be covered. But it's not as great as it looks at the moment. So if you look up that total column so remember, we got 1,455,000 over budget. But we look up the column and you see
109.
short-term rental tax at 6% is 1,442,000. Remember, we're holding that aside.
Right.
So in my mind, when we're talking about free cash,
Don't include that.
So don't include that, right? So if you got 1,455,000 including it, but we're gonna back that 1,442,000 out, essentially we are break even. We've hit our target
Mhm.
minimally
You're subtracting the 1,442,000 from the 5,619.
from the amount, yeah, which makes us pretty much on target to our budget.
Mhm.
But remember, this is only through April, so we got two months to go. Right.
Right, right.
So everything we collect from here on out for May and June is, extra. I did check this afternoon, the status of collections up through today. And it's at least as good, if not better in a couple instances, than the prior year. So if we went to the prior year sheet and looked at that, we can expect about $500,000 in May
Mm. Mhm.
and
Yeah, and about
Almost
a
a
million,
million
almost a million
in
in
June.
June.
So then, of course, again, we have to back out the short-term rental tax again.
Mhm.
So
Oh, yeah.
long and short, what I would say, as of the end of April, what this report is showing you is we certainly don't have a deficit, so we don't, have the problem a lot of towns have. And we're starting to get into the accumulation phase that's going to turn into free cash for us when we certify it at the end of this year. And I would anticipate just from local receipts that that'll be in the neighborhood, based on this, of $1 million conservatively.
So the 1,442,000 that we're talking about currently through April. For the short-term rental, that's the money that we're saving, so to speak, for the wastewater.
Right, so historically, we'd used it for the capital plan and reserves. Then we used it 900,000 of it for housing.
Mhm.
This year, we used 750 for the wastewater capital stabilization fund. And then when we have free cash certified this year, if we continue to have with our plan that we seem to have implemented this past year,
Mhm.
probably will be adding to that wastewater stabilization account again
Mhm.
for that excess, for that short-term rental. But at this point, we're reaching our target of about 1.5 million. Which is good news. As long as we can sustain that, as far as being able to fund the debt service that we just passed, that we just told everybody we're gonna use the short-term rentals to pay. So, that's looking good. The plan that we've been talking about informally, the informal plan we've been, the methodology we've been talking about using seems to be on track and seems to be working.
Now, where are our monies invested? I mean, obviously, interest rates are a lot better this year than they were last year, so I just didn't know.
Yeah.
I mean, you can see that on here as
We've
far as
had a
the
couple new-
earnings on investments.
We've had a couple new, well, not a couple, we have had a new treasurer who hasn't been here, or has been here just a year now. So last month I started actually having that conversation with her, because we are seeing increases in rates. When she first got here, it almost didn't matter, because wherever you are, you got
Zero
0.2%.
Yeah,
So why, bother? But now it's, not too much effort. We can get 4.3%. So we're having that conversation, and she's moved some money, and we've changed some of the account structures at Rockland Trust and Cape Cod 5.
Mhm.
And we are getting 4% plus on a couple of accounts, and now I'm working with her just, it's a learning curve. So, and not actually, most treasurers don't do this, but this is something I've always done when I've been in that role, and I'm training or teaching our new treasurer to be cognizant of, is doing cash flow projections. So that we're only keeping on hand on the lower yielding accounts, the cash needed to cover the upcoming payrolls and vendor warrants. And anything excess, we're trying to invest. And so far, it seems like she's doing a great job, because it's not here, but she just sent me a text or an email a couple days ago. In May, interest was about $57,000.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm sorry, what did you say?
In May, interest was up about $57,000 just for that
It's
month.
really jumping up. Yeah.
So yeah, now that those are going up, that's opportunity for us. We definitely pursue those opportunities. But no additional risk. They're all insured accounts. So we're not investing money, using bank money markets, FDIC, and Cape Cod 5 used to be what's called DIF insurance. So like any deposit at Cape Cod 5 was covered, but they discontinued that.
You're right.
But now what they do is they sweep out money in excess of $250,000 for customers at the bank and disperse it across the country at various banks, so you don't have more than 250,000 in any one bank. So
Yeah, I had a conversation with them.
You do CDs too.
we haven't. I'm a little wary of that just because of the water project and our cash flow needs. But that's wrapping up. And I just had a last Thursday, which was another update, but a call with our financial advisor regarding bond authorizations and the timing of that. And so once I get that nailed down, we might look into that type of thing. But right now, CDs aren't too much higher than what,
Yeah.
for not locking your money, we can get 4.1, 4.2, and a CD, maybe you could get 5. Or, but more often than not, I think they're more like 4.5. So it's just incremental money for locking your money up for 18 months or 2 years. It doesn't make sense. And we can't lock up our money that long
Not
anyway.
not that long, right? I had another question about the marijuana hosting fee. I know that's not going to be allowed any longer. Is that the case?
Oh, it's allowed, but there's no requirement for them to pay it. And so that was an item I wanted to point out here. So up in about the middle of that page, you see
The hosting fee for 3%.
marijuana. Yeah, the first line is the state excise tax, so that's not going away. I don't think we'll get another payment in by the end of the year, we might. But right now that's 233,000 and we had budgeted 200. And then the line right below that, we did not budget because that was the local host community.
Right.
And we had one of our stores did continue to provide some payments on that.
So
But
that's the
probably is
76
going to stop.
9,
Yeah, that will likely be stopping, and the other one stopped altogether,
right.
and we haven't had a chance to response to see what they want to do. They don't have an obligation to do anything, but we were able to engage with one of them. And and this is our approach is, they're not obligated to do it legally, but it's still a thing. And so, we all these agreements still have to get approved by the Cannabis Control Commission. So will be interesting to see what approach they take if they allow us to do this. But our approach, Jackie and I, and are talking with the attorney with the one of the shops, was you don't have to do it, and we know if we want you to, we have to document, specific costs, and it becomes but like in my approaches, in most negotiations, you can just agree to stipulate, right?
Mhm.
So instead of us, coming up with all kinds of documentation that theoretically or potentially could cost them a lot of money if we could document it all, which I really don't want to do because it's a lot of time and effort. And then I'm sure it'd be a lot of time and effort and aggravation going back and forth about how legitimate it is. Why don't we just agree that if you were to pay for, since there's 2 of you, 50% of a position, like a social services type position, maybe could be agreeable. So that's what we're trying to work through. And I think we're making progress with one. And if we can get the other to come on board with that, then that puts it to bed, because we know we're not going to get the full 3% of their sales. And they know that if we pursue it, it's not going to be nothing. So we're just trying to find a reasonable middle ground
Mhm.
that we can just agree to.
Is that consistent with what other towns are doing?
Nope.
No. Okay, so you're really doing something.
Other towns, big cities are fighting
Hmm.
and losing. And other towns, but probably don't even know, the small towns just aren't aware of the issue and not following up on it.
Last year, we got a pretty good size payment from the state in June. It's like 58,000 or so. Maybe we'll get another this year in June.
What are you looking at,
The,
Peter?
the first line.
Oh, yeah, you're right, Peter. I took the budgets as a receipt.
The
Yeah,
marijuana tax 3%, the first line.
Yep.
So we make it another.
and that's like a 2-month lag. It comes in June, but it doesn't represent May. It's because they got to get their payments through
It's every
April
quarter- every
in by
quarter,
May 15th.
a quarter or something.
So it's 2 months behind. So that payment in June will reflect the 3 months ended 2 months. So May, April, probably March or April. not the busiest of times, but
Is
So-
one of our dispensaries doing a lot better than another one, or don't you, the information, not the information, but the financial information that you get just as both of them together?
yeah, I can derive some information based on what they had sent us. But now that they're not sending it to us, I can't, so. Yeah. But it's interesting, he spoke with the attorney for one of them. He's a pretty interesting person. And gave me some good insights. As you know, I used to have a public accounting practice and did tax. And I kind of forgot this stuff because I never had clients that dealt with illegal goods, or at least the ones that didn't tell me about it. So, but marijuana is illegal federally,
Right,
Oh.
right.
but it's still taxable, and they have their own special tax rate at 50%. And so I knew, but forgot. And I also forgot, there's a regulation or law, whatever it is, that you're not allowed to take deductions on illegal income. So it's stuff. So, even though you're doing well, it does take, because of those, it's heavily taxed and regulated, does take quite a bit of sales to generate a profit.
Mhm.
Back in my, a lot of small business folks, if they had a good year, they'll go out and buy a truck because they can write it off 100% and lower their income. But if you're not allowed to deduct your expenses, it's not the same in the pot business.
Looks like they're doing at least as well as they did the previous year, though, right?
Yeah.
Better.
Well, I think I had read somewhere where so many dispensaries have opened up, and particularly up in Provincetown, that it was sort of starting to affect the business down here.
Well, that's my overall concern going forward. So I don't anticipate that would increase our 200,000 for the state excise.
Right.
Because we'll have a shop opening up in Orleans in the fall, and then Brewster not too long after.
And so that's
Yeah.
just going to cut into the business.
We're not too worried about, P-Town's pretty discreet to itself.
Mhm.
If you're there, you're gonna go there, but you're not gonna go by Eastham, just to go to, unless you have, maybe some personal relationship or something,
Yeah.
but by and large, we're the first one
Right.
from
Right
on the
now.
Outer
But I
Cape,
think
right?
we're the only one with one right on the bike path.
Right.
Next to the bike rental
You're
shop,
talking
so
about
that's a whole
Wellfleet,
market.
you're talking about Wellfleet.
No, Salty
Oh, Salty
Farmers.
Farm, because the one up in Wellfleet is right on the bike path too.
Yeah, but you hit Eastham first,
Yeah, oh,
so.
yeah, yeah.
Time they get the wealthy, they don't know. where
Those
they-
By the time you get there to the bike path, who knows what
Yes, I'm
condition you'll be in
going
when
north.
you get further along the bike path.
I guess the other
Uh.
two spots I just want to check in with you on, it's not evident because we don't have May and June in here.
Oh.
But in May and June, we'll have obviously beach sticker sales,
Mhm.
and that'll be ticking up. That looks to be holding at least consistent with the prior year. So, that's promising. But I also want to specifically mention the transfer station. That's probably going to be at least, if not a bit higher than last year. And the reason for that, and this relates to a discussion on reserve fund transfers. So you've had a lot of extra volume apparently, which is cut, when we budget for hauling and disposal and all that stuff based on a certain tonnage or certain amount of solid waste disposed.
Hmm.
Well, we charge extra for construction C&D, and that's higher. And so we will have more revenue because of that, but it's also a reason why I will be asking you for reserve fund transfer, because so it
Associated costs.
ends up being, net okay to us, but it does necessitate a budget transfer to cover the extra cost. We have extra revenue, but we don't take revenues and apply them to budgets, so.
So where is the trash going, or the refuse, or whatever you want to call it, from the high school? The construction up there, the trucks go by my house, they're
Mm.
jammed packed with stuff.
It's like, I don't know. It's a
Where,
good question.
where does that go?
Well, the stuff that has asbestos in it, which is a fair amount of it so far, the stuff that's been demoed,
Mm.
is going to Ohio.
Mm.
Wow.
But I'm not sure where the rest of it goes.
Mm.
It might-
Yeah, It's
might
not
go-
going, it's not going to
another
our,
New
I thought it was
England
going
state.
down. I thought it was going down to Rhode Island and Connecticut.
Yeah, I think it
That's what
goes
the
to another
DPW
state.
commissioner told us when he came over
Did
the
he?
budgets,
Okay.
because he was saying even the cost of hauling that had
it's
gone
expensive.
way up on them
Yeah.
last year.
Is that part of the Nauset High School renovation budget?
Yeah, that's what Mary was asking about, the demo from the
Yeah.
renovation project. And
I was just wondering whether any of
The
it was going to
asbestos.
our own transfer station, but it goes by my house, so it's not going there. Huge, I mean, you won't believe the trucks that go by my house from,
I don't think you can take construction do they take construction down at the transfer station?
See, D, that's
Yeah, but it's,
They
construction and demo,
separately?
yeah,
Okay, so they separate that then.
and you weigh in and weigh out,
Yeah.
pay by the pound.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
that's,
you have to weigh in, yeah.
yeah.
You might make a little money in there.
Yeah, no, it's a net, Sylvia had this figured out. I
Yeah.
think we had well, I say this and it's not quite true, but you know, on the raw transaction of what we get paid to take in versus paid to get rid of it, there's probably a 35% variance. That, of course, that doesn't account for the staffing and all that,
Yeah.
right? So,
Okay.
But-
To our favor though.
but to our favor, yeah. But there's been some, and this is one of my comments on when I have something to give you on reserve fund transfers. I've already talked to John. We need. I don't know the timing, and that's something I gotta talk to Jackie about and probably discuss with the select board. But you know, it's no doubt in my mind, because the increase in costs over the last 2 years, that there ought to be a fee adjustment there. If that's our approach, you know, covering costs through fees. Is something we need to do. So that's local receipts. The other part of it is this big report, and I didn't, this is my challenge, is I want to figure out a way to summarize this. You know, my old position, my former town I was in, I had other software that I could just automate this, and it went out like clockwork every month in a summarized fashion. I didn't want you to look through this, and we're not really at that point yet anyway, because there's lots of manipulation that has to happen because of the way we do encumbrances and purchase orders. And not all departments are great as far as the timeliness of getting their bills submitted. So that's an effort I got to undertake a little bit more in earnest this year. So this can be more reliable, because you'll see things on here and you might ask a question, but there's a reasonable answer as to why. But you know, I know the answer to why, so I don't get concerned. But now if I'm going to start distributing this information,
Right.
you know, I'd rather those issues not be there, so it's just apparent on the surface. So that's some data validation and technique that we got to go to improve to get this to be more meaningful. But the concept here is the same. So if you were to go to the very last page at the moment, when I did this report, total budgets were 39,746,000, and total expenses as of the date of this report, which was June 12th, was 34,292,000. We had some encumbrances, which means we had unspent appropriations of 5,154,000.
I'm having trouble. Oh, there's the 39, sorry. Okay, go ahead.
You're on page 64, right?
Yeah. And you're looking under the revised budget.
Yeah.
Item. That's
So-
the 39,746 at the bottom.
There's no way we're gonna end up with 5 million. There's lots of reasons for that, and this is what, you know, this is why this report isn't in and of itself meaningful to a finance committee. You know, so like the typical big ticket items would be, you might very well have, which we do, debt service payments scheduled in June. That are big ticket numbers, and so that 5 million can quickly jump to 2 million once you pay your debts. So it's a matter is what's showing as a surplus, and do you know what's coming up against them type of. My best guess, based on my look on this at the moment, is that we're probably going to come in somewhere under $1 million. But you know, revenues is about $1 million, right? So if we come in less than $1 million, but maybe it'll be a little bit more in revenue. You know, I guess my best guess is what I'm telling you as far as an update.
You're talking about free cash now.
Savings that would go towards free cash. And we're looking at maybe about $2 million between the two. Between the appropriation savings and the local receipts and surpluses.
So Rich, when I looked at that, and I kind of skimmed through it, and when I looked at it, I looked at the big swingers, okay? I looked at people who had only spent like 30% of their budget, and then somebody who had spent like 150 or 200. And I'm sure, like you said, there's good reasons for it, but will we use that data now maybe to tweak the budgeting process going forward? So maybe some people don't have accounts that they really don't need anymore, and we really move the money to the accounts that perhaps they've learned that, hey, this is really where I should be budgeting. So is this part of our maturing process and the budgeting process as we go forward?
No,
No, it's not.
I think the
The
budget,
same, huh?
I mean, we can always, I'm being a little flippant, but
Yeah,
I think the budget's pretty sound, and the justifications you receive when we go through the budget book are legit. And so that's, you know, my job of making sure that they are legit, and if they're not being spent, why aren't, what was the reason not being, is it no longer legit when we thought it was, type of thing.
Yeah,
But
but it just occurred to me when I looked at some of those accounts, there were some accounts that we budgeted things for that were at zero.
yeah,
You know
well, I'll
what I
tell
mean?
you,
And I'm not picking on any one. I think this is a maturing process in my view, you know what I mean? With the people who are responsible for doing the budgeting in each departments. But as we go down the line, I would hope that we'd say, okay, there's no sense for a uniform expense in this account, or we're not really printing anymore. So let's call the kettle black. and
Oh,
move the
for-
money
yeah, for
where we
sure.
can. And I don't mean to pick on those two.
But the other challenge we have, and I meant to say this. This is an old accounting system.
Mhm.
And it's a big effort, and it's just really not it's working, it's fine. But in my mind, there's some cleanup that could happen here, but to do a cleanup that has, this has been around for, I don't know, more than 10 years, whatever, at any rate. To do that cleanup and change accounts with history is a bit of an undertaking.
Yeah, to compare. one-
So-
Yeah.
It's not just easy of just changing accounts, but the problem is the way we budget nowadays doesn't quite line up with how we put it in our system, which is set up the way it's set up because the state has some pretty antiquated account reporting requirements too. So this is more set up to what the state needs us to do, but it doesn't quite fit into our budgeting. So when you see some negatives in here, for example, I'm not worried about them being budget deficits because I know that's not how we budgeted it. And I know there's another account that has a positive
Yeah,
that really offsets it. And that's what I'm talking about. There's some massaging of
Yeah.
this.
yeah, I'm not, you understand that if you have a large budget and you've got all sorts of items that you've got budgeted for, you overspend on one budget, but you have an underspent on another budget. You can use the underspent on that budget to,
I'm with you 100%.
Yeah,
You know, I've
offset,
done
yeah.
balancing of accounts.
yeah,
you know.
yeah, okay, I just wanted to make sure you understood.
I was just hoping though is if we went forward in our budgeting process next year, that we would
Oh,
budget
yeah,
better, higher where we needed to
Mhm.
and less where we didn't.
yeah.
need.
So if we overspend on this one, we should take that into account.
Right, but Rich might come back and say, hey, we overspent by 50% in this budget this year because we had a one-time expense. You know what I mean? So next year, we're not expecting that. I would understand that. But if that's gonna be, and that's what I mean, what I'm hoping is when we see the budget books this year, we're gonna see 23, we're gonna see 22, 21. So we can actually see actuals against what's planned. So we can see if there's a trend, and if there's a one-time exception, well, we'll see that in the expenses. But if it's a trend, then we ought to be planning to budget more for that,
Mhm.
you know what I mean, rather than every year having a 50% overrun,
Mhm,
you know what I
Yeah,
mean, in
yeah,
the budget.
yeah.
That's really where I was coming.
Yeah, I agree with you.
So there's, and I think we talked about this when we reviewed the budget. The really only spot that's got that excess that you're talking about.
Mhm.
And give you a page number in a minute if you want, but it's the DPW construction accounts.
Mhm.
We had been appropriating money for roadways, repairs and maintenance. I think it was like 20 or 30,000, probably 30,000.
Right.
Nothing spent against it. And there's a couple other things like that. But that's because we got a water project that's absorbing these costs. I could drop them out of the budget, theoretically save us that money. But then, 3-4 years from now, when we need to add them back because the water project's done, everyone's gonna say, why do you need to do that, right?
Mm.
And so what it's doing now is essentially giving us, generating free cash.
Free cash, yeah.
And so remember that concept, not everything is budgeted. That I would say the budgets are not aspirational,
Yeah.
but we budget for what we anticipate likely to need, knowing that some things will not occur.
Yeah.
And that's proved beneficial to us because it generates that free cash. And I forget the number, and this is why I like to do this every year when we do our year-end review. I like to review the percent returned against the budget. S&P likes to see 5%. We've been in the 3% range, and S&P gigs us on that, but I've got, but that's okay with us because it's not super conservative, but it's not super tight either. And we make up not getting 5% because we're doing so good on the receipts.
Yep.
So,
I get you. I understand your strategy behind it.
Mhm.
So
Those
it's
are the kinds
about-
of things that I would go right after if somebody was giving me a budget.
yeah, well, that's the approach in a lot of towns. And this is a topic for another day. Because it's interesting, and it goes to shared services and regionalization, but I helped out another town in their budget cycle this past season, which is part of my, probably why I look so frazzled. But that was their
Speaking of
approach.
Being busy.
That was their approach. And it drove me bananas. And it was very short-sighted. And they're gonna feel some pain. Because I've seen how this goes. They had pain last year. Because they're so short-sighted and budget everything to the bone. They're gonna feel a bit more pain this year. And now the budget that they just sent for next year is not going to be sufficient. And it's just becomes cumulative effects.
Mhm.
And it's gonna take a huge effort to convince someone to correct the ship.
Did they exceed the 2.5% tax
They
levy?
did, and I convinced them successfully that they really needed to do an override, and this is a town that had never done an override in their history.
Mm.
And it passed town meeting,
How
but
did
then
they
got
operate?
significantly roundly defeated at the polls. 2-1 it lost. This is a community in the 92nd percentile of lowest tax burden in the state. But very conservative, very old school approach to things. Just literally changed from a 3-member board of select board to a 5-member with a town administrator. So a lot of change. I mean, I get it. It makes a lot of sense the way it happened, the way they do what they do. But it did serve as a stark reminder to me of, there's a lot of those types of organizations out there compared to how we do it. And that's why we're having good performance, which I guess is a lead in. So one of the third things I wanted to say on the FY23 update is I have scheduled, I'm working on our projections and our debt service schedules. And I spoke with our financial advisor. And so we're trying to hold everything over till the fall to do a borrowing. At which time we can replace our outstanding short-term bond anticipation notes with long-term bonds. It's looking to be an attractive long-term rate market in the fall.
So you're waiting for the rates to go down?
And no, the rates they might go down, but a long-term rate right now is probably less than a short-term rate because of the way bond yields are working. And so we will permanently bond our short-term bands and probably issue the ones that were just approved at this last town meeting. And because of that, now we have an opportunity to get our bond rating review. So that's
what I was gonna
another
ask.
big thing that I got to work on the next couple months.
Does
And
that come up?
so before we issue our bonds in probably October, November, we'll need a bond rating review. And I told them all the things we've done and where we stood, where the condition is. And they're very hopeful that they think we will get the AAA upgrade,
S&P.
S&P.
I just was talking with the high school groundbreaking ceremony with a former selectman from Orleans. And he was saying how having the AAA rating really helped them with their water bonds. I mean, no, sewer.
Yeah,
sorry, wastewater. And he, was very informal conversation, but he said the thing that really got them over the hump was to have a concrete plan for OPEB. Like more than
Are
just sort of
they
throwing in a
Doing
hundred, have sort of a
level funding?
town meeting
Yeah.
vote or,
I don't know if I agree with, it certainly helped, everything helps, but it's a balancing act. You could be weak in one thing if you overperform in another. So I guess in my mind, it's more of a matter of priority.
right.
The problem we have in this whole process, and unfortunately I have the benefit and the curse of some history and hindsight of some of these things, but there used to be a guy I worked for S&P, probably told this story before, so you get sick of my stories, but he lived in Sandwich, Carl Jacob, and I'd give up Carl and say, hey, Harwich is looking for an update. We drive him down, he knew Harwich, but bring him to lunch at, Witchmere Harbor and all the nice places, right? You would avoid the landfill and, it's much more subjective and, you can exert some influence and you tell them all the good stories, all the development that was going on and that would affect, and I forget the year, maybe 2008, when, economy went down, they blamed a lot of these rating companies. And the big thing that came out of Congress was we need rating criteria. It needs to be transparent. And it can't be just subjective because you like the folks or they think they're a growing town. It needs to be hard and fast, objective criteria. And so that's been the game for the last 10, 15 years, is understanding that objective criteria and targeting your performance to meet that, which is what we've done. And there's little subjectivity left. And even more so, it's become almost like auditing was becoming when I was an audit partner. Very checklist driven. So now when you call, and you get your rating analysts, you get the young kid, probably just out of college within a few years, going through the checklist, and he doesn't, they don't understand the nuances of the things that you're doing that are beneficial, like exempt debt. So yes, we have a lot of debt because we have a water project and we have a potential sewer project, but it's all exempt. And on the sewer, we got a plan to finance it. They don't know what that means. And I guess that could be problematic that if you're relying on your taxpayers to pay all your debt, but we can demonstrate that it's not overburdening our taxpayers. It's not like our taxpayers are paying 50% of their income to the town, right? So that nuance isn't as appreciated as much as it ought to be. So it's a little bit of a battle, but despite all that, even with the objective criteria, we've done things to put us in a good spot for that AAA. Our reserves are where they need to be. Our management score and our policies. I don't know if you remember that slide. It's one I show you at the end of every year. Management score is 25% of the things that we can control, and we've been rated strong. And at this point, there's no reason we shouldn't be rated very strong. Matter of fact, Wellfleet got downgraded from a AAA to a AA plus,
AAA.
and part of that was a
Couldn't believe
downgrade of the
that.
management score because they can't keep management or staff. So
Yeah, I could never understand how they were AAA going through what they were going through over the last year or so. But I have read that they've been downgraded.
Right.
Which doesn't surprise me.
But you don't get rated every year, right? You only get rated when you're getting ready to issue something, right?
Yeah.
That's when they want to hear
or
about
if they really are interested in you.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So when do all of the bills have to be in now for fiscal year 23?
So starting, probably last week, but definitely this week, Tina, our accountant and accounting office is really pushing it hard with the department heads on getting their bills in. When I went through here, I recognized some spots where I know things aren't in.
Mm.
It's actually sent out some pleasant reminder emails this morning.
Is your window, Rich, like into the next fiscal year? Like, do you have 7 days or 10 days?
15
There's
days.
usually a
15?
date. There's
Okay.
usually a date.
So by the end of June, we'll have substantially everything in. We'll be ready ahead of the game. And so we really use that 15 days as a, a vendor's not responsive type of thing. And, but by the end of June, we'll be in really good shape. I guess the one little thing that screws us up this year is our final payroll, which is all for this fiscal year, incurs on July 1st. But I can reasonably anticipate what payrolls are. So we should be okay on the payroll front. So that 5 million that's shown here as surplus is gonna go, away.
So when should we anticipate being able to have the final fiscal year 23 numbers?
So that's a good segue. So I spent a lot of time on item 4 here. If you want, Mary, can we just skip to 6 just for a second?
Yeah.
The futures agenda. Out in the packet that was sent out was a futures agenda that looks like this.
Yep.
And this is just your first time seeing, I mean, some of you have seen this type of thing in the past, but some of you are new. This is just my communication to you guys of things I think you ought to cover. As the chair or as a committee, you guys can decide whatever you want me to tell you about. But I have a schedule to it, and I think the schedule makes sense. So next month, I'd like to update you on OPEB perhaps. And in August, I'll give you preliminary budget results for 23, basically a follow-up of this discussion. And I'd like to present to you a 5-year operating budget projection. And I seem to have that twice. So I have to update this, but in September, we look for a financial policies update or review. So we have financial policies, so it's just kind of to remind you and to go through them. See if we need anything different.
So what's the difference between what you've got down here on the futures agenda? In August, you've got preliminary prior fiscal year, and then you've got it again in September.
Yeah, I don't know.
Real preliminary.
Put it in play. No, I'm not doing it twice.
Preliminary and then,
I think probably what that was, Mary, is in when I originally drafted this, I thought maybe this would be good for August. And maybe what we actually did last year was September, and I didn't delete the August. But, you know, you guys can talk about how you want that, when you want it. I think I could probably do each. But anyway, to your question, Mary, is October is the prior fiscal year end review.
Mhm.
So that's why I put together all the documentation and summarize it into the PowerPoint presentation that we use as the basis of decision making. And we'll also have the first quarter at that point.
I put in some dates for the starting at the top. Or for July 12th would be the
Right.
date for the July meeting.
Mhm.
The August date would be August 9th. And the September date would be September 13th.
So this is, you know, just a very preliminary, you know, list of things that we could discuss. And I wanted to distribute this to the committee today and just have it on the agenda and work with the chair, co-chairs and vice chair, I guess. If there's anything this committee wants me to address, let them know and they'll let me know, and then we can put it on this agenda. And as things come up, you know, and we haven't scheduled them yet, I'll just list them as items to be discussed in the future. And we can keep a running tally.
Yeah,
but-
yeah. Because
but,
one of the things that I found a little frustrating last year was that when we started working on the fiscal year, well, last time with fiscal year 24, when we were working on it, we didn't have the information for fiscal year 23 to compare. And for some of the
Some of the lines.
Yeah.
yeah.
No, that wasn't a matter of it being not done. That was a matter of I just didn't put it in there. That was my own error.
Because I think that that's helpful to have.
Oh, yeah.
I
No,
mean,
it'll be in
to
there.
compare what you actually spent last year to what you're talking about for this year.
Yeah, and the year before that, like Tom was saying.
Yeah, so we can see a trend.
These trends.
Yeah.
Then, you know, when we're looking at preliminary budgets, we can look at the big things. We shouldn't be looking at the little things. That's, you know, management.
So just back to the futures agenda. Is it your thought, Rich, that perhaps the three of us would sit down and put this together?
Well, it's just a placeholder for the committee to think of things that will be coming up probably. And that they have an opportunity to add other things if we need to. And then when we have agenda meetings, you know, we should refer to that just to make sure that each agenda is covering these things.
Yeah. Because when we get down towards the November, December time period, when we start meeting like once a week with the various departments.
Yeah.
I think it's helpful to, if we can, to try to put that together in advance. So we're not at the last minute. But some of that depends upon when you got, when you have the information from the departments themselves.
Right.
Yeah.
You have anything on the futures agenda about tracking debt? Because you're gonna be folding in some bands into long-term debt.
Yeah, so I actually have to do that the next month or so, but that would be part and parcel of the 5-year projection. So the 5-year projection is the operating budget and the capital budget. But remember but I break out as part of the operating budget, the debt. So I have to do debt projections. So what's our debt service on our bands going to be once we bond them? And what's the cost? This is a debt service on the new bonds. And part of that is, and the reason I'm trying to wait till October is that buys us a year, essentially. And I'm trying to time as best I can debt drop off of existing debt with the bringing on of new debt. So,
Right.
so that will be reflected in the 5-year projection. We can have that discussion. And that's so much that projection contain, you know, that might be something that we cover over. So it's probably not a bad idea that I got it 2 months, because you might want to cover a piece in 1 month and a follow-up of the follow-up following month.
You know, I only had the courage to print out, I guess,
How many
65 pages of what you sent out. But I went through the debt because debt always interests me. And there's some really interesting terminology in Massachusetts. But what is this state cherry assessments?
Cherry sheet assessments.
Cherry sheet.
It's real, you don't have to refer to it as a cherry sheet. It's an old mnemonic. It doesn't apply anymore, but back in the day, when they sent you assessments, they sent it out on red
Yeah, I
red
was gonna
paper.
say it has to do with being red.
Now,
Right.
So everybody called them
It has
cherry
to do with
sheets.
debt. Debt is
Yeah,
red.
Now it's just, an update to the website. Click the link.
I wonder who first came up with the term cherry sheet. Oh, dear. And are there any other questions or discussion on this?
Just,
Go ahead, Russ.
just for one, I think I missed something on the beginning of this, but these two sheets that is the same.
No, the ones where the April, May are missing, or May, June rather. The ones where May, June are missing, that's for twenty
This
twenty-three.
is fiscal year 2023.
He has
Sure.
2022 at the top, but that was
Oh,
in error.
They're two different years.
yeah,
This
that's,
is 23,
yeah,
that's 22.
I was going the other way. I was
Yeah.
thinking the other one was 21.
Yeah, no. The one that's filled all the way through is the 2022, and then the one that's missing the last 2 months is 2023.
So I mean, the only other question I might have is, I don't want to poke the bear here, but, when we did the reviews last year, the school system, in the regional school system, not to decide tonight, but we might want to decide how we want to participate or not participate and how we represent to the people at Eastham, what
It's
we
not
really
something
reviewed.
I have on my list to
No.
bring up, because I thought we were all very frustrated.
Yeah, and
I was
quite
frustrated.
frankly, I don't buy, okay, the response we got last year that they can't issue us preliminary budgets, okay? Every other town, every other department can do it. They ought to be able to figure it, or I would welcome the opportunity for them to come in and explain to us, their preliminary budgets face to face at one of our meetings. So I think we ought to think about that.
Yeah, it's on my agenda here. Thank you.
That approach, I used to get this all the time, and I'd always mentor other folks to not be that way, but it's hard to change how people do things. But that comes from a culture of not wanting to be called out or be accountable.
Sure.
Or, not having to change your message. Whereas I've kind of been, we try to be here's what we think's gonna happen, but if it changes, I don't mind telling you. And if you want to yell at me and give me a hard time about it, you ought to. But, I give you my best guess at the time.
Sure.
And if it's just approach is totally different. And it's my more story time, so I apologize. But I feel actually very lucky in this. I started in municipal finance in 1993 for a local guy that was one of the first municipal auditors in Massachusetts. He started his firm in 1975. Up until that point, the state did all the auditing for cities and towns in this Department of Revenue. And they decided they were going to get out of the business, and all the towns could contract to private audit firms to do audits. And he was one of the first ones. And municipal accounting back in that day was quite a bit different there. That's what's called the statutory basis of accounting. And it's evolved from that time till now. But my boss was one of the first ones, and I learned all the old ways and all the old things, which it gives great help because it gives you understanding as to why you are where you are today for a number of things. So I forgot why I went down that story, but that culture and that approach of how people did things, and accountants always used to hold things tight to the vest. They never wanted to say what they thought the free cash might be, because if they're wrong, someone's going to yell at them.
Sure, right.
I'll tell you what I think. It just don't hold me to it. And but it's just it has evolved over the years from something that's always. And back in those days, you didn't have the internet, and so accountants were always very tight
Right.
to help. They were the keepers of information, and nobody ever wanted you to have their
But
information.
remember, that's also why we have the FASB board now to monitor the accountants, because
Right.
the accountants couldn't monitor themselves.
So
So,
those accounting boards, FASB, those evolved in the 80s
Yep.
because of that type of thing.
Yeah.
And now information is just readily available. So but a lot of people haven't evolved
yeah,
from that.
sure.
It's still out there.
But the real challenge, I'll be honest with you, which was extremely frustrating, was getting the budgets from the schools, like 24 hours before we came to the meeting with a stack. That was almost an insult to the fact, one, they didn't provide us preliminary data when we asked for it. And then when they gave it to us, it was insulting. They gave it to us a timeframe. They knew we couldn't review it to come into the meeting
Well,
that they had scheduled.
that's not the first year that that's happened.
I know.
Gotcha.
One year we didn't get
first-
anything in advance and we literally came to this meeting and then they passed it out.
Yeah.
So what some people on the
Doesn't make it
school
right.
committee have said in response to that is that that their meetings are public.
Right,
Oh,
then
yeah,
we should
and
go to
budget
those meetings.
So maybe we should, because then they also say, well, we didn't, as a school committee until, what did they say this year? They said Thursday and they brought it to us on Monday.
Yeah.
So I think maybe we should
Yeah, we've
attend
got
some
to-
of the meetings.
Yeah.
And maybe that's the answer.
Citizen speaks, we want to get some preliminary, we don't want this
Mm-hmm.
stuff dumped on us.
Yeah, I agree with you, Peter.
It'd be also interesting to maybe talk to our counterparts in other towns. I
Yeah,
gotta believe that
and go-
they're just
and
as
get The other,
frustrated.
they have to be.
Well, Russ, you've in the past, you've attended over numerous years.
I've sat in a lot of meetings and other towns send people. And we spoke at those meetings,
Mhm.
not as detailed on
You'll move
the.
his thing up closer to him, please.
Not as detailed on the financial end, but you can have input there. So I strongly recommend that we do that. And with more than one person if possible. But the people that were always there were Orleans, Wellfleet, sometimes Brewster. And they should have been the ones there all the time. Because there's so much of their budget, the regional committee. But it's worthwhile going. It just takes time.
I think one other possibility to look into is when you ask them for their financial material, but to phrase it that not only finance, but what are your outcomes with this from an educational standpoint? Because administrators like to talk about what they're doing, but if you can tie it to their budget, they get more excited about it. And that may be one way to draw them in when it's time for us to speak with them. But we not only want your finance, but what are your anticipated outcomes from an educational standpoint?
We do have an East Ham member on the school committee, right?
Oh, yeah, we've got
Yeah,
two.
Two.
Yeah.
Might be a good conduit to talk
Be
to.
in
as
touch
well.
with them, yeah.
I think that, well, Scott Carey's wife,
More,
Maura Noonan Carey is, on the committee. She's from town.
Sure they're in the loop with what we do or don't do.
Mary, are we ready for number 5, the transfers?
Yep,
Got some late breaking information. I wanted this up to date as it could. Yeah, if you pass it down. I apologize, Paul, you don't have this.
Okay.
so, the finance committee has $200,000 in its reserve fund.
Right,
this
so,
year.
we did that for good reason,
Yeah,
which is
we
we
upped it
anticipated
last
some
year.
shortages. And the one I was most worried about has come to fruition. So I'm glad we did it. I'm still honestly, and we're gonna cover that one last.
Talking about the fire department,
No,
Transfer.
transfer station.
down at the bottom.
Yeah, we'll cover that last, but
Oh, boy.
yeah, well, when I get to it, we'll get to it. But let me go through from starting at the top, street lighting. And I honestly don't know why we do it this way. So in the future budget, what I probably will do is take the street lights and just make it a component of the energy budget.
Hmm.
Because if that was, then we wouldn't even need to do this because it seems kind of odd to pull out an $8,000 item for electricity when the other 400,000 of electricity is,
We don't even have streetlights.
we do.
Very many.
But
very
and the
many.
costs went up about 30%, which is, I think, what we wasn't without out of our expectation.
Electric rates, right?
And in our electricity budget, we provided for that. But not in this one-off account. So, it is going up next year. It isn't going up next year, but if we include it as part of the overall energy budget, if it happens to go over, it wouldn't be a problem that we'd have to vote something. But as it stands right now, we're short $1,200 and we got another bill to come for about $800. So we're looking for $2,040. And I put page 40, that references the 65-page document. So if anyone wants to look at any of this detail, so not match these numbers because these numbers are as of yesterday, whereas this was run last week. But these are the most up-to-date ones.
So why did I haven't read your little note on the side here. Why did street lighting go up 30%?
Electricity went up 30%.
30%, but I mean,
Huge jump.
it seems awfully, I mean, all of us pay electricity bills, but 30%.
Rich, are we making any progress about whether we buy the streetlights? We lease them now, right?
Yeah.
And it was all tied to maybe a potential with things like internet for the town and all the black holes we have
Yeah.
around here.
It's on my radar, but I haven't moved it forward.
Yeah. Was the town gonna put a committee together to look at that, or was that just an idea? that no one's really
It's something,
scaled down any further?
If it's gonna happen, I probably have to be involved a little bit in
Yeah.
our DPW director, but
DPW.
he's been really busy, so
Okay,
just,
right
just
now
hasn't
we-
moved, but that might not be a bad thing to put on our futures agenda, just as a reminder.
yeah.
Could they be made into solar lighting?
Probably.
I mean, instead of.
If we own them, it could be anything we want.
No, I'm saying make
They
them,
could be adapted.
make them solar.
I wonder where the state of that art is, because I know I have these solar lights for
Yeah,
a
yeah.
sidewalk and they're like 3 years old. They work great.
Yeah,
So maybe the street lights are
I bet you the DPW commissioners up to speed on
up
something
to
like
speed
that.
on that, yeah.
The next one where we had some challenges is community development. It's on, if you were looking, want to follow along, that would have been page 18 on that appropriation report. So we vote community development expenses in total when you have multiple lines. So what I've done here, I've aggregated the total because just because we're over on legal ads, I wouldn't necessarily come for a reserve fund transfer. But that has thrown over the full all the line items of accounts. So right now, all community development expense accounts are short about $180, and we anticipate about another $1,300 or so. But it's really only one account that's causing that problem, and that's the legal ads. The price of legal ads went up,
Hmm.
and the volume, because of all the regulatory things that we need to put legal ads for, has gone up.
I apologize. When you say legal ad, you really are referring to advertisements we have to make because of the town having meetings, things like that. Not that we're looking.
Well, not even meetings. It's more driven by applications, Conservation Commission applications
Yeah,
and things like that.
okay.
Legally required
Yeah.
notices.
We're not looking for a lawyer here is what I meant.
No.
so I know at one point the town used the Cape Codder for a lot of those things, and we don't use the Cape Codder anymore.
Switch to the independent.
It's, I thought, because I've seen some of the stuff.
So
in
that
the
ought to be a
process.
savings, and we did increase knowing this was coming and knowing we had a higher volume in FY 24, this line item went up $1,100 or so. So the combination of that and a little bit of a lower cost, we should be okay going forward. We've adjusted. But that's we're looking for a $1,500 transfer. Hang on, my son's,
We're onto porta potties.
hang on one second, excuse me.
$20,000. Where are we?
So
Right.
on the third item, which is page 55, really has to do with porta potties. This is, I have to kind of coordinate this effort with Jackie a little bit and with Christine, the Beach and Rec Community Services Director. We did know that was going to go up. And that's reflected in FY 24, that line item went up $8,000. But I do think, and I don't have a great handle on this, but it's a combination of the cost of a porta potty, how many locations you're going to have them, which is 15, and how many weeks you're going to have them. And I think what happened is we got caught using those weeks at the end of the season, right? Because the fiscal year is June. So last season, I think maybe they got extended a little bit longer because we had a lot of activity on the beaches. But now it's the start of the season and we got to have porta potties there for this. So that's why we're going to have some more weeks than what we normally had because they got extended last year at the end of last season. So that's a budgetary issue. And if that's going to continue, then I got to make sure that we're
The next year we should,
picking that up.
yes.
Well, also,
Or that we revert back to the number of weeks that we're budgeting for. We could, always, but then people will, and this is Christine's challenge. People will complain, how come I can't go to the bathroom at first encounter?
well, but aren't we also adding food trucks to First Encounter and Campground Beaches this year? And as a result of that, are there gonna be more porta potties there?
No. I don't think so.
Food trucks are gonna be at First Encounter and
Is it camp?
Campground.
it's not campground.
No.
It's
Cooks
Cooksbrook.
Brook.
I wonder if
I
that
thought it
will
was
increase the
campground,
need
okay.
for porta potties,
Yeah,
so
so is
the
that,
use.
that's what I thought maybe.
Well, that's not what the need for that's not generating this request, but
No,
a good point. I guess we'll have to see if it does, more people go in the, I guess if you can wait 5 or 10 minutes,
No,
I should be able to get it.
because that's what might be.
That's where Russ lives down there.
it's a
Maybe
20,000.
they don't have to be as comfortable. I don't know.
Snow and
Change sides this year.
snow and ice, you wouldn't think, we didn't have a lot of snow last year, but we did have a lot of
Didn't have
events.
any.
We did have a lot of events where we deployed crews for sanding and salting. And so that's reflected in some overtime that we charged us. That's directly related to snow and ice. And we did have to replenish the salt and the sand, and that was way up.
That's excuse me, that's the line you don't want to over budget for, right? Because
Right.
once you get up to that level.
You're required to keep funding it then.
Well, you're able to over budget.
Uh,
There's not a problem.
no, because if you over budget, then the.
Oh,
state
not
says
the,
you have
I'm
to
sorry,
stay
not the
at that
budget, but
level
you
the
can
next
spend
year.
more without a
Yeah.
Right,
problem.
right.
That's what I'm sorry. I meant to say.
Finance committee.
And I think
Yeah.
all the things that caused this to be higher probably would have been just fine if I was going back and looking at this. We had a lot of, despite not being snowstorms, a lot of plow and equipment related, sander and related repairs that had to happen that were costly. So that's what drove that, but it's relatively small. So that's the request, 537903, and that's an exact. Obviously, we're not doing snow and ice, haven't for several months now, so. Fire department, their expenses are coming in just fine. They've pretty much on target, and they will have expended almost all of their expense budgets by the end of the year. But they did have one anomaly where they had an incident that they had to secure a property, required to secure a property, and they had to put fencing around it. And that was just a one-off thing that they weren't planning on.
The Bridge Road.
So
Yeah.
that was $3,800.
Hmm.
And so that's what we're asking to cover that incident. And if we do, they'll be made whole for their fiscal year
So
budget.
that's a legal responsibility for the town
Yeah.
to erect the fence?
It's a public safety. And so the chief's call to it's a requirement or not. So he felt it was.
But that comes back through insurance or the property owner.
Yeah,
eventually,
what about-
right?
Property
Yeah.
owner, that's the issue. The property owner didn't have insurance. And we had to secure the property.
That's the issue. Yeah.
This one's been a couple years coming. I just felt it's time. I just wanted to act and get this behind us. Back with COVID, we spent money under the CARES Act, and those regulations kept changing about 4 or 5 times. So the result of all that was that they didn't approve some of the things. I think these are fire department costs that they, couldn't properly equate to a COVID related response or whatever the criteria was. But they assured us that FEMA will cover you, which I'm sure they will someday.
Well, this is amazing. Your note that the storm reimbursement from 2012
Yeah.
from FEMA is still pending.
So I just don't want a $20,000 deficit sitting
Yeah.
there when we have the means to cover it and move on. So I just want to get it behind us. And if we ever do get that reimbursement from FEMA, it'll just punish the general
For
fund.
dinner.
So I'm asking us to cover that shortfall. That's not in the general fund, that's a separate fund that tracks that grant money. And we charge expenses against, and we put expenses in there that we thought would be reimbursable, but ultimately weren't. And might be by FEMA, but we don't want to wait.
Did you see where the state has been told that if they don't spend some monies within some period of time, they've lost something like $80 million? There was an article in the paper just yesterday or today about,
It's today, they spent it though.
yeah, well, they've
Took care of-
hastily,
Take care of all of it except 3%.
except, yeah, right. But, yeah, ridiculous that they haven't done something before now. Anyway.
Which finally brings us to the transfer
Transfer
station.
station.
I mean, really, that's not just any one item, several things. So we have an account for waste removal. That's supposed to cover the cost of a hazardous materials day. But the whole of the account essentially was consumed by actual product that we had to dispose of. Which then meant that we didn't have the money for the waste disposal day, or the hazardous material day, but the hazardous material day still occurred. So now we're short basically the cost of that, which is about 25,000. C&D disposal, this is what we had talked about. We do have this offsetting revenue, more or less. But the extra hauling and disposal costs related to the C&D is about 35,000 over. And then,
So have we taken that into account? Did we know about this when we put the budget together for the upcoming fiscal year?
no, not on the disposal, because it's based on a tonnage, so,
Yeah,
not
no.
that tonnage doesn't always go up every year. But we did know about the next one, and I had it, like, guess I didn't put it in the note here. But off the top of my head, I think we increased for 24, the transfer station, all these costs related to the transfer station, $57,000. So and that's mostly for the next one, the solid waste transportation costs skyrocketed. And that's about a $35,000 overage. So the 57,000 that we went up, all things being equal, ought to pretty much cover the solid waste transportation that's over this year and the C&D disposal, so I can keep doing that hazardous waste disposal day. But it doesn't cover, I'm sorry, not the C&D, the waste removal will cover that, so we got that covered, the 35 and the 25, the FY24 accommodates those two things. It doesn't accommodate C&D disposal volume greater than what we budget.
Right.
So if we have this same situation next year, except that our C&D goes back to a more normal level, we should be fine for FY24, I guess what I'm trying to tell you.
Could you explain that hazardous waste thing again? I got confused. The consumed by product.
Yeah. So we budget, I think that account is $84,000 for hazardous waste
Hazardous waste
disposal. That's supposed to include the cost of a hazardous waste day for our residents to go there and get rid of stuff. But what's ended up happening is they've had to dispose of other hazardous waste type materials
The
and
transfer station. on-
separate from the hazardous
on
waste
that
day.
So they didn't have the
Okay.
money for.
And that 84, and that consumed all of the 84,000, and that, the option could have been not having the hazardous waste day.
Right, right.
And we probably wouldn't need this transfer, but they did. And so now we gotta cover it.
So they-
And it shouldn't be that way, honestly. So, we'll talk to folks and in the future. I mean, I think it's the right call. Everybody would have been up in arms if they didn't have hazardous waste day, and we do it for a reason, which is public health. And, people aren't dumping it in the woods and stuff. So, I think everybody would agree we ought to have done it, and we would have had a reserve fund transfer to cover it, but we really ought to have that up front, not after the fact. So I'm trying to get our department heads to that point.
So you can, people can bring hazardous waste into the transfer station on other days than trip.
I'm not sure how that works. I think,
No,
that-
I mean,
No, I
I'm
thought they
thinking
did it
fluorescent lights is
DPW.
one thing, but I wonder where the 84,000 went to, other than hazardous waste day.
I don't know the make. I know there's every month there's bills related to that, but I don't know what the makeup and why they have it or don't have it,
Now, do we allow people from other towns to use, come to our hazardous waste? Because
Just Orleans.
I've been
Orleans.
able to go to Orleans.
Right,
Sure.
it's,
Yeah, so how does that work from a financial perspective? That they have their day or days and we have ours and.
I don't really know.
yeah, there's
Guess we should,
in the fall,
Hmm.
and they pay theirs and we pay ours, but we agree that
It's just a
you
wash.
can go to both.
Yeah, right.
Orleans and Eastham residents.
just to make sure we just send them to Orleans. And
I know.
The future.
No, I've gone there.
Everybody to go to Orleans.
Better waste.
That's right. We should put a little ad in the paper,
Yeah.
a legal ad.
We're not talking about that.
Orleans, but like,
They'll say you can go if you drive on the beach from Eastham out there. They'll say that's the only way you can get there.
So all that adds up to 95,000. And honestly, I'm waiting on, they're behind on some bills, so it might not add up and it maybe adds up to more, but I guess we've got 200,000 and a large reason why we bumped it up to 200,000 was the transfer station. So I'm comfortable suggesting that we ought to just do it. And obviously, if you don't use it, it will, just like the reserve fund, would just go back to free cash. So
it's all this add up to.
That's
Rich,
what I was looking at, 115, 118, 123, 143,
143,000, 687,
46, 47, 147,
approximately.
147.
Yeah, Russ has it down to the.
Yeah, it's 143,687.29. If my.
What did you say again, Russ? 143,
143,
Yeah.
687
687,
dot 29.
that's what I got.
29 cents.
Yeah,
So that's what we need to.
I can handle that.
You can, you're gonna pay for it yourself and then we don't have to use the reserve.
Rich, I've got a question on the C and D.
Yeah.
What do you attribute that to this year, that it's so much up?
Well, increased last year as well. It's just that I think we were able to accommodate it. But just the volume of, renovation and construction in town. Or it's actually not just town, it's
Yeah.
Outer Cape, because remember, we're regional drop off for the Outer
Right.
Cape. They could bring it to a private disposal in Orleans, but we're a better deal.
Yeah.
And that was Silvio's approach is, we're closer than Orleans, so people would rather, if they're coming from P-Town or Troy, would rather come here, and we're slightly cheaper, but we're still making, I think it was a 30 or 35% differential. So it still made good sense for us to do it, but it's, Outer Cape construction.
How much of that is the local residents of Eastham and how much is it the builders that,
It's all builders.
right?
I don't know how much is Eastham versus others, but it's a good question.
But they pay
Yeah.
when they do the drop, right?
Yeah.
Get weighed in and weighed out.
But wouldn't that cover the cost of?
Yeah.
It does, right?
Right.
But it's,
And there's no additional staffing, if we had to have extra staffing, then that'd be a problem, right?
Right.
Okay, well.
But
We'd have to look at raising the rates if it's not covering the staffing, right?
Right, but it's purely the cost to, what's it cost for us to transport and dispose of at CMAS?
Yep.
And we want to charge at least that,
Yeah.
Plus,
plus a markup.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%.
Personnel.
I was just wondering, when I looked at this first line, first thing I was thinking was, well, even if it did go up,
the
when
revenue.
someone
should have-
dropped it, the revenue should have gone up with it.
revenue went up.
So why did we run a deficit?
Because the revenue doesn't get added to the budget. You
Okay,
got a town meeting voted appropriation, we're stuck at that level.
that's why. Okay,
So that's why I mentioned when we're going over local receipts, it's gonna be higher than it was last year.
Yep.
Because this extra volume generated extra revenue.
you can't put the extra
Can't put
revenue
it-
in here without approval.
Right.
Gotcha.
So this will require an increase to all the residents in terms of
waste.
the dump or the transfer station fees.
So I put a note here. I do think we need to look at all the transfer station fees,
Okay,
but the C and D fee is a discrete fee separate from the dump stickers. It's
Right.
charged directly to the builders.
right, okay. So we can potentially cover that by increasing the price,
Yes.
and that'll depend on how much we increase this as versus how much it may decrease the volume we get in the future.
Well, I can probably figure out, you know, what's the per ton fee for hauling and disposal.
Yeah,
So if I can identify that, then we will start there and mark that up.
Yeah.
You know, whatever that, maintain the same historical percentage we've had. So it is a money maker for the town, so to speak, even though we're not allowed to make money by charging fees, but it's a Supreme Court decision. A fee to generate funds is a tax. So we charge fees to recover costs. That's what we always say,
Not to make money.
not to make money.
So I have a question. Last year, we had on this discussion, the family support package.
Yep.
And we're putting whatever monies are left over from last year back into the various categories the 3 categories, essentially nutrition, housing, and the pre-K.
So that'll be for your next agenda.
Okay,
I figured I'd just hold off on that
that's fine.
so that we
that's
had a
fine.
more exact
Yeah,
number.
yeah, that's perfect. Yeah.
But Mary, to your point, I meant to list that. That is on page. Sorry,
Probably. more towards-
51.
Probably towards the end more than the beginning.
Page 51 shows family support preschool. And it shows as of the date of this report, June 12th. Budgeted 272,400, and we spent 178. We got
Here it is.
94,000 left. So if that remains unspent, and we don't let this money, since we've got an existing account, we've taken the position that the state allows us to do year-end transfers
Mhm.
from one account to another, and we've got an existing article account. Articles carry over year to year, operating budgets don't. So since town meeting passed an override for these specific purposes, we want to honor that intent. So if any money is left over in the operating budget, like this 94,000, if that were to hold,
Yep.
we would ask the select board and the finance committee in July to vote to transfer that to the article, since an
Right,
article
back to the
retains
article
its.
versus free
Right.
cash or something else.
Per ton.
But that's really, that amount is because we haven't spent it all since the beginning, each year, so it's been building up.
Right.
Thank you.
So hopefully next month will be no reserve fund transfers, because hopefully this covers it all. But we will have a vote, year-end transfer vote, which isn't your reserve fund, it's a different vote under the laws. So we'll have the select board take a vote and the finance committee take, so I'll write a memo to each of, be the same memo to each of you. And Jackie will present it to the select board, and then I'll present it next month to transfer the unspent monies from the family support package operating budget line items to those articles, which preserves them for the purposes for which they were raised.
Originally, yeah.
But you want us to vote on these tonight, right?
Yes, please.
So I just have a question, because you're saying anticipated through 6:30 for the figures that you've got in the second end listing here. So how you're anticipating, so you don't know exactly.
Right.
So although the total that you are looking for is as Russ mentioned, the 143,687. And that would be coming out of our reserve of 200,000.
Right.
Right. But you don't know whether that's actual or not.
I feel pretty good about all of them except for the last one. The transfer station could be plus or minus.
What do you do then?
Then I could have a little bit out of the reserve fund next month, but I'm hoping that we cover it here.
But next month will be too late.
No, you can make your transfers up. That's goes to Tom's earlier question.
15.
You have up to 15 days.
15 after the end of June, 15th of day of July, you're talking about. Yeah.
Our meetings before
And
that.
our next meeting is
July 12th.
12th of July.
12.
How did you forecast it, Rich? You just extrapolate out what you, based on what you've
What the
seen?
bills are. Yeah. Talk to John over in.
Okay.
What's the volume been? And
Yep.
Hope
What's history look like?
I,
in
um,
June?
cushioned it a little bit, but not a lot.
Yep.
Um,
Okay.
But Hopefully it's good.
I don't know, I'm sort of I'm sort of leading towards waiting until the July 12th time to vote on it, since we'd have a better complete.
I think we'll be good.
Is that
And
gonna hold up?
I just want to have,
any other
I'm
years?
just trying to help out the account. I mean, if you, that's what you want to do, that, it works. But I just, it's easier for our accounting office to have these established, so she doesn't have to monitor them as much anymore,
So well, I'm sort of procedurally thinking if we vote on this tonight, but then on our July 12th meeting, if there's something different, we can, is that too late to rescind and revote?
You don't need to rescind anything. If for
Okay.
sake of argument, say I need another 5,000 for the transfer, I'll
Right.
let you know, hey, the 95 was enough. I need another 5.
Yeah,
But if it goes the other way.
yeah.
then you-
So, I mean, I'm just thinking.
If it goes the other way,
on it,
we just don't spend it.
I think it's,
What happens to it?
I think it's pretty.
Goes to free cash.
Goes
We need
into
the-
free cash.
Really need to allow the accountant to close the books out and when they can
Right.
close the books out rather
So-
than wait until 15 days.
Sorry,
That's why
I
I'd
just
rather
asked Rich,
vote
what
on it
happens
tonight.
if we don't spend it, if we come, if
Comes
it
less.
comes in under, goes to free cash.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
If it stays in the reserve fund, it goes to free cash. I'm certainly not going to take a reserve fund transfer for overages on hauling and disposal. And if that doesn't happen, that we're not letting them spend it on, uniforms or whatever.
Right.
And I think the reserve fund for fiscal year 24 is 202.
It is.
So what we're saying is if we vote on the 143,687 to come out of the 200,000. If the cost becomes more, then we would be voting on additional payment. Next in July. If it's less, then less would be paid and the difference would go into free cash,
Yeah.
along with the difference between that amount and the 200,000. That would go into free cash too.
So I guess I would, if Mary, if
That
it's
makes sense.
all right with you, what I'd be looking for, and if the number is actually 148,687, 289. Perhaps the motion could say to approve these reserve fund transfers as presented, totaling 148,687,
Oh,
29.
you've got 148.
Yes.
Well. Yeah, so I'm
So
ready to make a motion that we approve these reserve fund requests as presented.
So I second the motion.
That's Joanna and Mary,
I'll put
and
the number
Tom,
in that motion.
and Tom M. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
8-0.
Do you need a second on that?
I have Tom.
Okay.
Thanks, Roy. Yeah, I have Tom. Yeah, okay. See, was there anything else you wanted to talk about on this? Let me see, we're up to old
We
business.
did six out of order.
Yeah, right.
So 7 town manager report.
Yeah, is there anything under? I haven't
Just the
seen
thing I want to,
anything.
only thing I'd want to mention is, Sandy Johnson, our long serving assistant tax collector is retiring.
What's his name again?
Sandy Johnson.
Sandy, I'm sorry, I thought you.
So she's retiring early July, I don't think it's the first, but maybe it's like the 6th or something like that. We have a replacement for her. It's what I take a lot of pride in this, and the whole finance department does a good job in this, but we work our contacts and beat the bushes to get the best candidates. We had some great applicants. We had 12, we interviewed 6 and finalized 4 and had 2 highly qualified finalists. That could be the treasurer. And so it's part of the discussion I had with Maya, our treasurer. Is that a good working, and the decision is, it's great. And we can make this work. It's a sharing of responsibility and gives us more capacity and some organizational planning, transitional planning. Not that we need it, but if something comes up, we will have an assistant treasurer collector that could, after some onboarding and training, serve as a treasurer collector as well. So we're really excited about that. And that's Cameron Scott, who is the Wellfleet treasurer.
It's,
We, this is, this is not the first person that we have cannibalized from Wellfleet.
No, our health agent.
Our health
too.
agent, yeah, Hillary, yeah,
So,
we're cannibalizing people from Wellfleet like
Do we
crazy.
steal you from Wellfleet too? No.
Churl.
But saying.
Sure.
a new
Sure.
position,
It's not a new position.
Yeah.
the sanitary
You know, and he's looking forward to it because of our reputation for, you know, the way we do our business. And he thinks it's a great career progression for him and learning opportunity. And he'll, you know, we have a lot of high expectations for him.
What's the fire department doing? with
Yeah.
finding people?
They were doing good. We have a couple of resignations of people taking jobs in, I think Harwich is the culprit this time.
And where?
Harwich.
Harwich.
Which,
So, you know, just when you think you got it, you know, something changes. So.
Two of the best fire. They are two of the best fire people that we have.
That we lost.
were they officers or
I'm sorry?
were they senior officers or?
No,
No, firefighters, okay.
And can you tell us what the story is as far as Lori retiring? You're talking about people leaving.
she's retiring.
I know, do you know when?
Yeah, she's July 20th, something more or less.
Is there
Uh,
going to be some sort of?
I'm sure we'll have something.
Yeah,
Okay,
for both
you'll-
Lori
you'll-
and Sandy,
you'll
we
let us
will,
know. I'm sorry?
both Lori and Sandy, we will have something. So.
Okay. And aren't, the police, the fire, is it the police department, aren't they? They've been having signs up looking for,
Got one opening at the police department. Have interviews to, might have been today and tomorrow. So hopeful to fill that. I've been very lucky having candidates. The worst, you know, the losing the two firefighters is like, you know, the worst personnel luck that we've had in a while, but largely it's been positive. You know, the turnover has been retirements or expected things, and we've been very lucky, very successful in recruitment and retention of folks. And that's a testament, again, to how we're all doing business. You know, at the end, there's a write-up in the paper today in the Independent regarding the Wellfleet staffing situation. And I just hate to be beating a dead horse here, but you know, in the second half of that, there's in the further pages is the real thing I think everyone ought to pay attention to is the culture and of the organization and the, you know, the desire of people wanting to be part of it. And so people's attitudes and the way you do business and conduct business and the way you treat people from committees and select board to administrators and department heads matters. And that's what Wellfleet's struggling with.
I have a couple of things under, I guess you might call it old business. The 7.2 million that might be available from the state for the construction of the high school. How would that be? Would that be allocated in the same way as the original capital cost per town? The 7.2 million?
Well, no, the 7.2 million just comes off. I mean, there's
Right, it comes off the total. and
less to
then
allocate.
but what's
Yeah.
left is going to be allocated differently. I mean,
Participation
the same way it was originally allocated, which would mean that we would.
well, no, I think what gets allocated is the actual debt service. So they would have to borrow less
Right,
because
right,
they have more money coming off the project cost.
right.
So it'd be less debt service. And that debt service gets allocated each year, potentially in a different way.
Based on
depending
October
on-
1st, I
on
think.
enrollments,
on
right.
October 1st, head count.
So you're right, but just, you know, it's a little not quite the way you said it, but
Mm-mm. Okay,
But that's a bill in the Senate now.
right,
Part
right.
of the budget.
right.
But I was gonna bring it up for new business or whatever, just to report, there was a groundbreaking ceremony at the high school today.
Oh,
Yeah. And it
I didn't
was-
see any,
I know it
There
wasn't very
was
well
any-
publicized.
Nothing went out.
I didn't see anything about
It's a
that at
shame,
all.
yeah.
No, nothing went out.
It was well attended, but mostly by, you know,
Sure.
insiders, but the Senator Sear was there and Sarah Peak and
Is there anything?
I would love to have been there if I'd known about it.
Really? Should have told you. I actually, yeah, I just found out the time today because my computer died. But and the head of the MSBA who was retiring, Jack McCarthy, was there
Oh,
and mentioned that and he mentioned the 7.2 million, that if it passes, it sounds like that's how much our project is gonna get, so let's hope it passes,
Yeah, yeah,
but it's not a done deal yet.
right, right.
Um, But yeah, like the official groundbreaking was today, and today just coincidentally, was the first day they actually started erecting steel. And it must be 50 feet in the air in one day, so.
Mm.
So it's moving along.
Have they finished demolition?
No, they're still demoing, but they're pretty, I think.
Yeah, they're
they
getting
might be
there.
Finished, right? I mean, they're really close. They're just wrapping up the demo, but this contractor, they've done it before and they're rolling.
You won't believe, I live on Schoolhouse Road, which is the main road that they're using back and forth to that high school construction, and the trucks, the size of those trucks. And they're jam packed with, I mean, since they've been working on that thing back and forth.
Have you complained? The police
No.
department can get them off that road. I'm sure Google Maps probably sends them
Yeah,
down
yeah,
that
yeah.
road. because
They,
it's half a mile
yeah,
shorter.
it's one of them. I don't know why they don't go all the way up and bracket, but they don't.
That's my neighborhood, so. I'm pretty happy with the things that are going right now, to be honest with you. It might be those signs I put up around town. Detour. I swear.
Let's see, one of the other things that, and we can't make any decision or anything, but talking about the schools. The agreement with the school system for Provincetown and Truro is up for renewal, I believe, this year. And I really would like to push a little harder on getting them to get involved with the capital costs. There's absolutely no reason, but I think there are 11 towns that are paying the capital cost for the tech school. So there's absolutely no reason, in my view, that only 4 towns are paying for the capital cost for that. But that's something we should discuss another time. One of the things that I wanted to also bring up is that Peter and Jackie you have your meetings, your school meetings on Wednesdays.
Yeah,
And-
second Wednesday of the
Yeah,
month.
yeah, which is our meeting time. And many times you can't make it, Jackie can't make it. I didn't know what people's thoughts were on actually meeting on another time. Either another time, when do your meetings start?
5:30.
5:30. I was wondering what people's thoughts were on another,
It's not every month, but that's sort of the day that they've reserved to have meetings on,
Mhm.
so we could have a lot of conflicts going forward.
If you, it seems like this whole town meets on Wednesday night.
It does,
Yeah, you're
yeah,
probably better off if you were gonna try to find another day.
yeah.
than try
yeah,
to-
CPA meets the first Wednesday, which Joanna and I are on.
Yeah.
Um,
But this has come up before.
Planning board meets Wednesday, yeah.
Yeah,
Select boards are Mondays at 5:30. I just wanted to get people's thoughts on,
Why don't we, what's wrong with Tuesday? Conservation Commission does 2 Tuesdays. In
and
the month, but
Rich, and
Yeah,
Thursday,
yeah.
does anybody meet Thursday?
what are your thoughts, Rich?
ZBA,
Zoning?
but not every Thursday.
no,
We could-
once a month.
Yeah, we could
But
find,
is it
find
It's
a,
the, I believe it's the first
first Thursday?
Thursday of the month, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not sure of that, but I think it's the first Thursday of the month.
Would people want to meet on Wednesdays earlier in the day?
might be hard for Tom, right?
and,
No, I'm just-
I'm retired, so I.
You are
can
not?
anytime, yeah.
Early's better for
You're
me.
working till 5 up
What
there.
did
and
you say?
rushing down.
Early's better for me, I'm
I know,
falling
yeah,
asleep.
yeah.
What time would you want to start on Wednesday?
Well, you,
Board of Health meets at
your
3.
your meeting start at 5:30, Peter?
Yeah.
The school meeting.
Yeah. So we off and running.
3,
Might be a
3
bit, early.
o'clock?
About like 4 or 4:30.
Well, we can't meet at 4:30 when he and Jackie have to be at a meeting at 5:30.
But that's on Zoom, right?
Those meetings?
Yeah.
Well, they have been. Chairman keeps saying he wants to make them in person again, but so far they're still Zoom.
not every meeting goes 2 hours. I mean, the budget ones seem to, but
Yeah.
off season.
I'm
You
just
keep
saying in general, there've been 2 hours. I mean, I don't want to cut back on time to,
How about we just change it to a different Wednesday?
a third Wednesday of the month.
That's planning board.
That's planning
That's
board.
planning board. The fourth Wednesday looks open. I'm looking at the calendar for the town now.
I don't think there's any meetings the fourth week of the month,
What,
or very few.
Probably less chance for conflict.
mhm. Paul, what are your thoughts on timing?
I'm pretty easy. I'm still working, so I'm not retired, but I can make it work. Thursdays work for me.
See anything there, Peter?
I see, it looks like the fourth Wednesday might be open and possibly the third Thursday. I don't know what these meetings are. The third Thursday looks open. On August, September.
Fourth Wednesday, there's nothing.
There's
And,
nothing. Oh, thank you, Wayne.
Thursday is a secondary better day that less things be to.
Hmm.
So.
So the fourth Wednesday of the month is free,
Yeah, right.
is open rather, and what did you say about the third?
But would, is that still might conflict with Peter's?
Oh, the
Oh,
fourth?
that wouldn't.
No.
Thursdays,
Thursdays, you put two in general.
I think Thursdays tend to be bad. I think staff wise, at least I
Thursdays?
do, and probably Jackie too. Thursdays are off-site, we got, not always, but more often than not, we got meetings off-site in the afternoons on Thursdays.
How would people feel about the fourth Wednesday of every month, starting a little bit earlier?
Joanna would like that.
It's fine with me.
Mhm.
Like what, 4:30 you mean? Or
4. That would also,
Rich, does that cause you a problem?
yeah,
Probably not. no.
Home early.
yeah, you get home earlier. I'll be able to eat dinner before 10 o'clock at night.
Just start the night shift a little bit earlier.
I know.
Oh, I kind of like that idea.
Yeah.
Fourth Wednesday at 4.
So if we're talking about the fourth Wednesday of each month. At 4 o'clock, fourth at 4,
So,
fourth Wednesday at 4.
As long as you start after. So the only time that's gonna be a problem is July, because we gotta get things in before July 15th.
so we'll
Oh, yeah.
meet
So-
this.
So
Same
starting in
time.
August. And then next July, we'll have to make sure we don't have any problems. So
So we had ourselves down for July 12th for the next meeting.
So we're gonna stick
We're
with
gonna,
that.
we're gonna stick with that. And then the next one was for August 9th. And that will, that's the one that will change to
Push
the.
that to the
23rd.
third,
what-
the
oh,
30th.
I have my phone
23rd,
turned
right.
off. I'm sorry, what is it?
23rd.
23rd. August, and what's the fourth Thursday
Wednesday.
or Wednesday, the fourth Wednesday in September, Peter? Do you have that?
28th?
The 27th.
27th? Okay. Okay. All righty. So we're down for July 12th, next month, August 23rd for the following month, and September 27th for the following month. And we're going to be doing it on the fourth Wednesday of each month, except for next month, starting at 4 o'clock. Okay. Let's see, oh, I wanted to comment on the Cape Cod Commission is doing a survey, a housing survey. I didn't know whether everybody was aware of that, and it's really something that I think they want everybody to give their opinions on, and it's under, if you go in on the website, capecodcommission.org/housing survey, and it's very interesting. And they're giving an assortment of different types of housing and asking you for your ideas on whether you like it or don't like it, or sort of like it, or do like it, or what have you, so,
That's important.
yeah. Let me see.
What's that URL again?
Yeah, it's Cape CapeCodCommission.org/housing survey.
Takes about 10 minutes.
Yeah, 10, 15 minutes. I did it a couple weeks ago.
They sent an email out on that?
I saw something,
Okay.
actually, I was at
Okay.
I was at a meeting that when they discussed it, so I'm not sure I've
I
seen,
wonder how they prevent that.
I'm sorry.
Wonder how they prevent doing it twice.
Yeah, yeah,
Then
yeah,
you have to
yeah,
Probably if you could
Register.
use the same email, they bounce you out.
Hope so.
yeah, yeah. Let me see, is there anything else that I had? Oh, I guess the, Jackie's working on the, charge for the, capital projects committee.
Yeah, they was still planning for the fall on that.
Yeah, to start in the fall. So at some point, we should put on the agenda that we've got to figure out who are, we have 2 appointments for that committee. So we'll do that later. Let me see, we've talked about the, educational budget issue that, Tom discussed earlier. A composting, there's a new composting program at the transfer station. And I've been being asked by lots of people where to get compostable bags. Does anybody here know where you can buy a compostable bag? I've searched various stores and I can't find.
I think, we had a meeting, the other day and we talked about that. I think Jackie I think they're working on a source now. I don't remember exactly what came up, but they're trying to find a source.
Well, I think she said that they're looking into a grant that would provide buckets, some buckets
Yeah.
to give out buckets, but in the meantime. People are, and what's over there are 2 large. Not, what am I looking for? Big trash barrels. It was very different than what I thought was going to be there. There's just 2 trash barrels, but they're just big. So,
Is it for food?
Why don't you send a note to?
Yeah,
the-
for
why don't
food.
you-
I'm sorry?
Why don't you send a note to the chairman of the recycling committee?
Oh, yeah, there's a meeting tomorrow night, at the library. And I'm going to ask them.
It's a good time to bring it
Yeah,
up.
yeah, yeah. I think that's all that, I know, I had a question, Rich. There was an article in the Provincetown Independent about all of the bit of locations in town that owed money. Mayor Golding put it out with all properties, yeah, that owe money, and it came to a little over 30,000 of the monies that were owed. And they're supposed to have been paid off or taken care of by, let me see, by May 4th. Yeah, so are these houses things that the housing operation could use for one thing or another? If
Well,
they
then
don't-
it's not even to that point. That's just a lien.
Hmm?
That's just a lien. So we're not even close to anywhere to being available for anything.
Years.
So
They don't
once
want
the
it.
due date passes, we have a practice of, I think probably a couple weeks of leniency. It's been our
Yeah,
practice
yeah.
before we process them to what's called a tax lien status. So that's a required notification that anyone that hasn't paid by the May 1st due date, somewhere around mid-May, we will perfect a tax lien, which means we record it at the registry.
Hmm.
So that if the property gets transferred or attempted to be transferred, a closing attorney ought to pick that up and we'll get our money.
Hmm.
So
Have
it's
we
just
ever
a,
closed on a house?
Yeah.
And so
there's 2
that's, so we will collect probably all of that in pretty short order. If we didn't, we do have a list and occasionally revisit it, and I think within the last several months, Art updated the select board. Just to let you know, we don't, there is a potential for foreclosure after, so we evaluate that every year. But we are not, and this is, actually have a lot of experience on this, having done this in Yarmouth and other towns. List of criteria, which off the top of my head, I can't remember them all, but we're not throwing out someone that lives there, that's a resident,
Mhm.
that just, and if they're of a certain age, I'm gonna call them up, or I'll have Maya or Colleen call them up, get them on our tax deferral program. So they won't even show up in the liens anymore because now they'll qualify for a deferral program and we'll get them sorted on that. If it's an abandoned property and we don't want, because that lien that you saw is just for this year, but theoretically you could have properties with liens for multiple years in a row. So if you got a $300,000 property and it's got a $200,000 worth of liens, we're probably going to be taking action because you want to be able to recover the cost of the taxes by the time you, right? But if you got a $300,000 property and a 1-year lien of, $8,000, you've got a long ways to go to be able to recover. So.
I offered Rich my cousin Vinny, and he said, no, we're.
Hey, Rich, real quick on that, has the town done municipal taking foreclosures in the past?
Yes.
And is that, how much money have they made, and with the Supreme Court ruling, you guys have adjusted for it?
No, so that's going to be an interesting, so Supreme Court just ruled that you can't make money off of it.
Right.
You can recover your taxes again.
Right.
But Massachusetts has a law that if we did foreclose, typically they're going to come and get their excess money anyway. But in the event that they don't, which is what the Supreme Court ruling was, Massachusetts you've always had to put it in an escrow, and we would create a liability account on our books for a year.
Oh,
And then after a year, theoretically, you could swipe
it
it.
comes back.
Most people in practice didn't because it's like kind of a bit of a hassle.
Oh, yeah.
And they don't want to have an extra hassle of having done it and then having to undo it when somebody comes back in 18 months, right? So usually the 1-year rule usually ended up being, 3 to 5 years. But that practice might be in question. But we're not going to be faced with that anytime soon, I don't think. Because the other side I meant to say, following up the tax lien, before you even get to the tax lien, to the foreclosure route, in addition to making sure elderly are on the deferral program and all the different things that we do to make sure people can do what they, pay their taxes. The final step would be a payment program. So we do have payment plans, but only for people on liens, because again, the lien perfects our interest in the property in case it transfers. But if you are liened and you can't pay, we will work with you and have a payment program.
It's a very, 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 very long process.
Yeah.
But
Time consuming.
and I hate to take up all the time, and I know it's getting late, but it is just another opportunity to prop up our folks of what we're doing. $30,000 in tax liens is an amazing collection rate. So that's not just Maya's work, but good work on our residents as well, paying.
They pay their tax.
Every couple of years, there's a write-up in Cape Cod Times because they've been tracking this for about 20 years now. And I can tell you exactly who they are. Barnstable, Falmouth, Harwich. Terrible tax lien rates, multi-millions of dollars in tax liens. Which is not a testament, but whatever the opposite of a testament is to their practices in financial management.
What's ours?
Well,
30,000 on.
Oh, that's the total lien you're saying. I thought you were talking about collections.
So for this last cycle, tax bills due May 1st.
Yep.
On our.
Yeah.
What, $28 million levy, more or less.
Yeah.
We had $30,000 that wasn't paid by May 1st.
Just see what it looks like.
It's 14 properties, I think it is.
14.
15.
15.
How late do they have to be before they? put the lien on?
You have about a 2-week grace period. So May 1st is due date, usually mid-May, we're doing the lien.
Get after it.
And then all those people, if they don't come in and pay up, which probably half of them already have, the rest will be on a payment plan. And we no longer have elderly that get on that. So we got them. Colleen's done a great job getting elderly folks on the deferral program, which means this tax still is assessed to them, but they don't need to make payment. It basically comes out of their estate upon their passing.
I don't have anything else. Does anybody else have anything?
I just have one question.
ahead, sure.
For Rich and maybe Art. How's the response been on the new zoning ordinances that were all approved?
Great. We got like 106,000 square foot houses in the pipeline. No,
You're talking about
Basements.
new growth.
I'm kidding.
That's the only thing he's interested in, new growth.
No, I'm kidding. No, I haven't heard anything. I don't-
Yeah,
They're not legal yet. Because we haven't
No,
gotten it
that's a
back
good
from the
point.
state.
Right.
There's a
okay.
meeting this week or next week with a combined meeting with the ZBA, the Board of Selectmen, the Select Board, excuse me, and the Planning Board to talk about implementation and things like that. But it's not the law yet. It gets approved by the state.
All of the zoning changes had to go to the
All the
state
state
approval.
zoning judges have to go, but everything we did at town meeting, just about everything we did at town meeting has to go to state.
And since we're talking about laws, just jogged my memory. This has been my pet project for a couple of years now. Our Eastham Community Fund just moved on to, I forget the committee, municipal and local something or other committee in the state senate. So hopefully it'll come out of committee and get a vote to be approved
When was that approved at town meeting?
2 years ago.
Takes forever,
Well, I had the charter.
takes forever.
I know we got the charter, yeah, took forever, yeah. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Russ, Russ one. And I'll take Roy second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye, 8-0.